it is. Okay, so we are officially recording live session. Here we go. We are finishing Unit 1 today, which is super exciting. It seems odd that we're only on week 2. We're going to finish Unit 1. That means next week is exam week. And we will talk about exam week more at the end of class. So we will make sure that I did post a thing in the announcements about exam week and how to schedule your exam, all that fun stuff. But if you have any questions, we'll take those at the end. So the first thing that I want to just throw up here, not literally because that's gross, but I want to make sure that you guys are aware of the modules, the workbook that you have, or the packet book, whatever you want to call it. The videos that go with that are all built in here. And again, watching them is probably going to be beneficial to a lot of you. And so I hope that you're doing that. Sometimes I get questions, and I love all of your questions. Keep emailing me all of your questions. But sometimes I read the question, I'm like, did they watch any of the videos from this section? Because I feel like that question would be worded differently if they had watched a video. You might still have a question because questions come, and that's great. But I just want to make sure that you know those resources are available. It's not like you just go straight to web work and then you got to figure it out as you go. You have the videos to go through the material to lead you into your homework, which is the goal, right? So we're doing modules 3 and 4 this week. In module 3, we've got 2 web work sections, an Excel assignment. Ooh, gotta write myself a note. I do have videos to go with every Excel assignment. So after class today, I will post an announcement with the live video from today, and then I will post an announcement with Excel help videos. So there will be a video to talk about how to insert a pie chart. It's like 2.5 minutes long, but if you need it, it's there. So you've got a quiz and a discussion board, and then in module 4, we should not have discussion boards in both of those. That's ridiculous. Oh, they're different days. Never mind. They have different due dates. Okay. And then we have sections 8 and 9, another Excel descriptive statistics. There will be a video for that as well. So those will be provided for you, a quiz, and then we get into the project. Okay. So the project we will talk about towards the end as well. And I do have videos to go with project 1 also. So there will be a ton of resource videos posted in the announcements at the end of today, just so that you guys are aware. You always want to look at that, okay? Rachel, I'm reading your note there that there was nothing for pages 39 and 40. Are you talking about there was no video for page 39 and 40? And that's probably true because it talks about an Excel spreadsheet, and I don't think I made a video for that page. It's kind of so there's kind of a short page. That's really not going to be super beneficial to your what's the word I'm looking for? Words, use your words. To the development of you in this class. Those pages are, I brush over them when I teach this class face to face because I don't feel like they're really all that helpful. So, but that's good to know. I don't think they're making the cut in the second or the next edition of the book, actually. So, but good. Thank you for letting me know about that. All right, so we are going to, well, first, any questions on anything so far? So we're through modules 1 and 2, right? Module 1 was due on Friday. Thank you for those of you who got everything done. I've updated all of those scores. And then you had module 2 due yesterday. I have not updated any of those scores. It's been kind of a crazy world around me right now, but I will get to those. If not today, definitely, hopefully tomorrow. But we will. I try to stay up on grades as much as possible. It just didn't happen this morning. It's been crazy around here. So keep up with that. You're going to have multiple due dates every week, right? I tried a Friday, Monday type of a thing, but I know, I think project 1 is due on a Wednesday. I know from past experience that if I make everything due on Friday, there are people who will wait until Friday, 2 hours before the due date, to start all of it. And there's just too much in this class. You can't get it all done if you try to do 9 assignments in 2 hours. There's just not enough time. And so by spreading it out a little bit, it makes your life, you may think that it's making your life harder because you have to spend more time on math, but in reality, it's going to help you in the long run, like getting ready for exams and that kind of thing. Okay. Any other questions? You guys are pretty question free at this point, but we'll go from there. Okay, so let's jump in then to module 3. And did you guys think last week went pretty well in terms of how we ran it? I don't know that we're ever going to go for 2 full hours. I was talking to a friend earlier today and I said, you know, I love math. Like math is kind of my jam. And if I had to sit in front of my computer and listen to somebody talk about math for 2 hours, I might want to claw my eyeballs out, right? Because it's just, that's a lot. And that's a lot. So I'm trying to keep it, you know, compact, give you what I think you're definitely going to need. So one thing that, make sure I cover this at the end, but exam 1 is next week. You have to schedule that assignment or that test. So we're going to go from there. All right. If there are no other questions, we're going to jump into section 6. So we're doing 6, 7, 8, and 9, and we're going to cover the highlights because again, you have to, you got to watch the videos to get all of the information, right? This session with me today is not me teaching you everything you need to know in these 4 sections. It's giving you the highlights and making sure you have your questions answered. Ultimately, this is about you making sure you feel good for the next piece. So real quick, this section gets into 2 acronyms that they're going to talk about, one of them being GDP and one being CPI. So GDP, do any of you know what GDP stands for?
Gross domestic product.
Gross domestic product is correct. So now we're getting into, you know, the real world. So gross domestic product is basically goods and services produced by a country. And we're gonna have problems where they talk about the GDP. And so as long as it's about math, right? We're gonna deal with math and that's gonna be fine. What about CPI? You guys know what CPI stands for? This is the Consumer Price Index. This Consumer Price Index is what you find on page 44. Ooh, Rachel, that's a real issue. I'm going to write myself a note, and I have a meeting this afternoon about things, and I'm going to ask about that. Yep. One other thing, Rachel, all of your messages are sending to me in private, which is fine. But if there are things that your classmates could benefit from, you might want to change it to going just to me to go to the entire audience. That's up to you entirely. Just want to throw that out there. Okay, so the Consumer Price Index is basically dealing with inflation. So if you look at page 44 in the table of annual values of the CPI, basically it says there's like a basket of goods and services that are bought every month, and they compare the prices. And as the price goes up and down, they determine inflation, or I guess deflation if it goes down. And so over time, you can see the average of costs have gone up. And I think all of you who have been alive know that prices today are more expensive than they were 10 years ago, right? I remember buying gas at 97 cents a gallon. Crazy, right? Now I get excited if it's under $2.50. You know, so it's just very different of life now and life 10, 15, 20 years ago. Very different. So the Consumer Price Index gives us a way to compare money over time. That is the purpose of the CPI value, dealing with inflation. So, okay, we're going to do a couple problems in this section dealing with GDP and CPI. Now, this first set of examples, there's a part A and a part B to this. There is a web work question that is very much like this. So if you have already started section 6, you might have said, man, this problem is a pain in my butt. We're going to go over one almost exactly like this so that you can work your way through it. And hopefully that will help. So, okay. In 2005, the federal debt in millions was 1,436,200, and the population of this random country that I made up is 120 million. and we're going to compute the federal debt per capita. Now let's refresh. What does per capita mean?
Per person.
Per person, absolutely. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the federal debt on the top, and we're going to put the people on the bottom. Now, one thing to notice, federal debt is in millions. What does in millions mean?
Add 6 zeros.
Add 6 zeros, or times 10 to the 6th, or anything like that. Okay, so one thing that I want to throw out for this particular problem, if we put the federal debt on the top, 1,436,200, and then we have million, and on the bottom I have 120 million, just the way I'm written, what do you see?
The millions cancel each other out.
Yeah, they do, and that's beautiful, right? So you could do the 6 zeros on both of them and then cancel out your zeros, right? Totally fine. But if you notice, you read the problem, both of them are in millions, make your life easier. Get rid of it. And now we're just dividing these two numbers. Seems a whole lot easier than when you're dealing with, these big, long, honking numbers. Okay, can anybody give me the federal debt per capita with that?
$11,968.33.
Beautiful.
32,
I love that you
repeating.
rounded to the nearest penny because we're talking about money. High five. All right, so we've got our $11,968. That's the federal debt per capita. So in 2005, for this made-up country, if every person would pay $11,968.33, the federal debt would go away. Boom. Okay, so that's not too bad. I feel like most of us probably could have gotten through that because the millions are the same, makes life easier. And then we get to the second part of the problem. In 2005, we still have the same federal debt. We have the same population. So now we get to part B. If the federal debt increased by $1.4 trillion between 05 and 15, what was the new debt? Okay, so it's increased. Mathematically, what is it telling you to do? If they tell you to increase.
Add.
Add, exactly. So we're going to take the debt that they gave us, and this is really what starts throwing people for a loop. Because remember, this is in millions. And then we're going to add to that 1.4 trillion. Right? And this is where people go, well, those aren't the same, which is a good thing, right? Recognizing that is a good thing. So I want to throw this out to you. Remember, from last week, we know that million is 6, billion is 9, trillion is 12 in terms of decimal places, right? That's like when we move zeros and all that fun stuff. So if we look at our federal debt, this top number, moving the decimal point 3 places changes the name. We talked about that last week. Okay, so if I have this 1,436,200 million, and right now my decimal's at the end. If I move it 3 places, this is the same as 1,436.2 billion, right? Because I just moved the decimal point. So I made it billion. Well, if I move it 3 more places, what does it become? Trillion. So now I'm at 1.4362 trillion. And if you're looking at me right now going, I don't know what the heck you're doing. Okay, let's go back to our original number, 1,436,200. And earlier, right, we said million is 6. So if I added 6 zeros to make this a million, right, following my train of thought here. If I want to change this to scientific notation, 3, 6, 9, 12, that's times 10 to the 12th, which means trillion. So now, my orange number down yonder here is my original debt in 2005. My green number, 1.4 trillion, is how much the debt increased. So if I add these two numbers together, now I have my new debt, which is 2.8362 trillion. Because once they're in the same unit, then I can put them together easily. But when there are millions and trillions, that's different. It doesn't work, right? You have to have the same units if you want to shove them together. Does that make sense? Does the process of which moving all of those decimal points make sense? Yeah. And if you don't like the idea of, moving the decimal space, you can do this stuff up here. You can put them both into standard form. Trillion means 12. You could move your decimal point out 12 places and do it in standard form just the same, and it would be fine. Okay, but there's a WebWork question almost identical to that, and it trips people up every semester. So I like to do it in class, a problem like it, so that when you get to that WebWork question, you've got a reference, right? If you don't remember, it's at the very beginning of this video. So that's that. Okay, so that's basically as much GDP talk. We talk about the federal debt and gross domestic. Well, I guess that wasn't even a GDP problem. I don't have any on here, but you will see GDP in your WebWork homework. Okay, so now we're going to the Consumer Price Index. So this is where you're going to need page 44. All right. Okay, so you know that you're going to need to use CPI if you are dealing with money and you're comparing over time. So that's your big key. If you read a problem and they're talking about money and time, you're going to use your CPI table. That's the key. So let me do one of these for you. I purchased a bike for $900 in 2014. What would have been a comparable cost for 1980? Now, in all of these comparison problems with money, we assume the price would have grown with inflation. Not faster, not slower, but just with inflation. So that's kind of an idea that we're dealing with. Okay, I think when we did proportions last week, I talked about how I like to label things. I like it to be very clear what I'm talking about. And so you can see clearly we are talking about two different years. We're talking about 2014. We're talking about 1980. Comparison over time, check. Here's a dollar amount. So if I'm talking about money over time, I am using CPI as part of my process, right? So inside here is where I'm going to write my proportion. Everything in the top, right? All of my numerators are going to be about money. All of my denominators are going to be about CPI. I set every one of these problems up identically because to me, it makes sense. Each ratio is a year. The top is money, the bottom is CPI, and I don't really have to think much. So the bike was 900 in 2014. So where does that 900 go in my proportion? Which position? Yep, top left, right? Because 2014. So 900 goes here. I'm trying to find the comparison cost for 1980. So this is my own unknown value. The bottom numbers come from the table. So if you look at page 44, so Dana, this is where you're just going to need to kind of bear with us. If you look at page 44 and you find 2014, you see the value next to it. That's the CPI value. So you've got 236.736. And then you go all the way down the page to 1980, and you get 82.4. So those two values represent the inflation business that's been happening. All right. And then we saw this proportion, right? We cross multiply. Look at the pretty colors on this page. Does anybody have any questions about where those numbers are coming from? Yeah, if you have your book in front of you, it definitely helps. All right. What do we get for an answer for this one? $313.26. Exactly. So the $900 bike in 2014 would have been $313.26 in 1980. So you can kind of see that's if it would have grown with inflation. Okay, I want you guys to try one of these. Dana, I want you to just do the best you can. You won't have the CPI values, but you can get the other piece set up. So go ahead and try this one. Okay, we got an answer in the chat box. That answer is correct. So we're looking at 1978, and we're comparing it to 2007. I like my monies on top, and I like my CPIs on the bottom. Now, just like with the proportions from last week, right, you can set them up a bunch of different ways. So you had the 49,000 here. You had the X here. 65.2 compared with 207,342. And then, as Rachel has in the box, we're at $155,824.51. Questions, comments, concerns, suggestions over CPI. It's just an application of proportions is what it is. And being able to, put things in the right spot, using the numbers from that table. That's the big key, is being able to use that table. Okay. Any questions? You guys seem pretty content today. Yeah, anything dealing with proportions, I love. I'm a huge fan of proportions. I think they're fun. I think they're easy to work with. So that's great. Okay, section 7 is working with percentages. We're going to do the first one as a proportion and as an equation. And after that, I don't care how you do it. Okay, I want you to do the first one with me both ways. And then I want you to determine which way you like better, because it depends on, well, for me, it depends on the problem, and it depends on, it depends on the problem. Okay, so with proportions, here's the basic thing about proportions when we're working with percents. When I say percent, what do you think of? What number comes to mind when you think about percents? 100. Fabulous. And that's exactly what should happen. So I like proportions because I think I have to think less. With the equations, I got to do a little bit more thinking, and I like to think as little as possible. So when you're dealing with proportions, we can put percent over 100, and that's half of my proportion already. So if it's 10%, it's 10 over 100. If it's 20%, it's 20 over 100. There's not a whole lot of thought involved there. And then the other side, the shortcut is thinking is over of. Is represents part of the problem, and of represents the whole. So if you think back to the ratios, like in section, 2 or 3, where we talked about part to whole ratios, that's what we're talking about on the right side. So the is and the of is a shortcut piece. So depending on the problem, some problems you will see, as the next example, you will see that piece. When we're dealing with story problems, generally you think of more part to whole. So, okay, so that's if we're working with proportions. When we're working with equations, you have to remember that, where's my words? Here. Is means equals, of means to multiply, and I use a multiplication dot generally, or sometimes we'll put things in parentheses to show multiplication, but we don't use x because x is an unknown value. The big key with equations is that with percents, you have to change them to decimals. And so there's just a little bit more work involved, and you have to make sure you're being very, very diligent with your details, because it matters. It matters. Right? So that's kind of the big key. Mathematically, if you do it correctly, you'll get the same answer either way. So you really just have to make sure you're paying attention to the details and you're getting it done. All right, let's go ahead and do some of these. 16% of what number is 40? All right, so first things first, we're going to use proportions. So when I use proportions, I always start with percents, always. So when I see 16%, what am I going to do with that 16?
Move the decimal over 2 places, 0.16.
We're going to move the decimal when we do the equation piece. So that's the next one.
Okay.
Because I mentioned we're going to start with proportions. So yeah, the first thing we're going to do in the chat box, we're going to put it over 100. So we are going to move the decimal in just a moment, but that's the next. Okay, so we put it over 100 when we're dealing with proportions. So percent always goes over 100. Now on the right side, remember, we're thinking is over of. So I have of what number is 40. So what number goes on top? 40. Yep. So because 40 is what the word is, it goes on top. And of what number? That's our unknown value for x. And there is our proportion. Boom. We'll do answers in a minute. Now let's set up as an equation. So now we're going to move the decimal. So I always, when I'm writing an equation, I go left to right, just like you're reading a book. So 16%, moving the decimal, 0.16. What does of mean? To multiply. So we're going to multiply by what number? I don't know. So that's x. Is an equal sign. And then we have 40. So either way, whether you cross multiply and divide on this side or on the right, you simply divide by 0.16 because that is the value that is touching x. Either way, what is your answer? Valena, we're not finding a percent on this one. We're just finding a number. See how it says what number? And yeah, we do get 250. 250. So that's one thing that you really need to be careful of. When you're done with either of these problems, whether it's a proportion or an equation, you've got to go back and make sure that you've answered the question. It says what number? 250 is a number, so we're good. We're good. Okay. You just have to remember that you're changing decimals when you're in the equation. With the proportion, you never have to worry about moving decimals. Your answer is what it is, and that's it. Okay. All right, questions about either one of those? We're going to do a couple of them, but you at home can do it whichever way you want. So, okay, number 5, I want you guys to try this one. What percent of 600 is 240? Proportion or equation, I want you to try it. We can set it up both ways on the screen, but I want you to try it however you want at home. So I'll give you a minute or so. Okay, we've got some answers. They're coming in fabulously, except we're with the percent sign on that one. So first question I'm going to ask you guys, did you use a proportion or an equation? You just put a P or an E in the chat box. What'd you use? Kind of taking a little tally. P, P, P. Lots of P's, lots of P's. I love it. I am a huge proponent of proportions. Okay, so as a proportion, what percent? So that gives me an x over 100 is over of. Yeah. You cross multiplied and you ended up with 40%. Now, that's beautiful. High five, y'all did great. I do want to just show the equation side of this one for a moment, just so that people at home or you can see this. All right, so what percent, I don't know, of 600 is 240? Now, I need to get x by itself, naturally. So I divide both sides by 600. And I get x equals 0.4. But that's a number, right? When we're dealing with equations, we're always dealing with numbers. So then you've got to say, okay, it says what percent. So I've got to multiply this, right, by 100% to change it back to a percent. And that gives me 40%. So you can see how the equation, I'm not saying it's harder, but you do have an extra step in this problem because you have to change that percent back and forth. Okay. All right, good. You guys seem to do well on that one. Let's go to a story problem. I want you guys to try this one. Just I'll give you a minute or so, and we'll see how you do. When we're dealing with story problems, I think proportions are so much easier. And hopefully, actually, yeah, there are rounding rules on the exam, so that will make it hopefully a little bit easier for you. But if nothing else, make sure you do show your work on your scrap paper, because if you rounded incorrectly on the exam, you'll lose all of the points because it's all or nothing on the exam. But then I look at your scrap paper, and if you've done all the right work, I'll give you most of your points back. Like if it's a 4-point problem, but you rounded wrong, I'll give you 3.5 of your 4 points back, which can be huge over the course of the exam, right? Okay, so what percent? So we're dealing with x over 100. And then you've got to think part to whole. Wow, that is a really long line, right? Her whole paycheck was $17.50. She only pays part to that in rent, which, as you guys have noticed, is 46%. Very good, very good. Any questions on dealing with percents? Like, do you want to do another one, or do you think you've got those figured out? You guys seem to do really well with those. I feel good about it. I don't know how you feel about it, but it's good. It's good. Okay, I assume you'll ask questions if you have them, because you guys usually do. So I'm going to go ahead and call it quits on section 7. That moves us into sections 8 and 9. So section 8 gets into descriptive statistics, which mean, median, mode, and range you have dealt with at some point in your life. And we all know with math, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. So while you've all dealt with this at some point in your life, it's probably been a hot minute, and therefore we're going to need to just refresh, right? Knock the cobwebs off, get back on the bike, see what we can do. So let's just do a quick refresh. Mean. How do we find the mean of a set of numbers? Does anybody remember? Yep, you add them all and then what? You don't just divide by 2. You divide by, so we add everything together and we divide by the total number of items. So if you have 12 numbers, you'll divide by 12. If you have 2 numbers, you divide by 2. If you have 8 numbers, you divide by 8. Right, that kind of thing. Okay, median. How do you find the median? Oh, don't apologize. This is good. We just talk. It's how we learn. Does anybody remember how we find the median? Dakota, yes, we do need to put them in order, least to greatest. That is the first step. And then we find the middle number. But it is crucial that they are in order first. So if you have 2 numbers in the middle, you'll find the average of those 2 numbers, because you do want the exact middle of your data set. Okay. All right, mode. What's the mode? Making you guys think today. I love it. Occurs the most often. Yep. So I always remembered mode and most both have an O in them. Oh, exactly. You got your O's. Most often. What number is there the most often? You can have 1 mode. You can have 2 modes. We call that being bimodal. Anything more than 2, the answer is there is no mode. Okay, range. How do we find the range? Yep. The range is the difference between your largest number and your smallest number. So you're going to take your biggest number and you're going to subtract your smallest number. And that equals your range, right? Just the difference between the 2. All right. Percentiles. This is one that I like to diagram a little bit. So percentiles, if we think about percent, we think 100, right? So if I have this line, here's 0 and here's 100. When you're talking about percentiles by hand, we can find 3. We can find your 50 percentile, 25, and 75 percentile. Any other percentiles need, really you're going to need technology, also known as Excel, to find percentiles. But let's think about this. If I want to find the 50th percentile, how can I do that? Think about it. You got a set of numbers from 0 to 100. There's all kinds of numbers. How would I find the 50th percentile? What does that represent, the 50th percentile? You're thinking too specifically. Thank you, Jacob. The 50th percentile is the middle number, right? If you have 0 to 100, 50 is directly in the middle. What do we know is the middle number? We already talked about it. Because we are in order from least to greatest, what is represented by the middle number? The median, exactly. So the 50th percentile is also known as the median because it's the direct middle. Okay, keep that thought in mind. Now let's pretend I cut this in half, right? Because halfway between 0 and 50 is 25. Do you have any idea how you could find the 25th percentile by hand? If all you know is the 0, the 100, and the 50, how can you find the 25th? Basically, yes, Dakota. Cut the median in half. If you would just say from 0 to 50, let's just focus on the front half, 25 is the median of the front half, right? So 25%, if we would find the median of this set of data, we have the 25th percentile. And the same thing goes, let me change color. If I just go from 50 to 100 and I cut that in half, so if I find the median of the upper half, I would have the 75th percentile, which is why those are the three we can find by hand, because we can use the median to do that. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and do some of these. So let's erase those drawings. Let's go to a problem. So I put them in order least to greatest for you already. I would like you to do A through D. If you want to try E and F, go for it. But I'll show you kind of my shortcut of how to figure that out. But A through D, I want you to kind of try, because I know that that's a refresher type of a thing. I want to see how much you remember, and we'll go from there. So, okay, start those. Just give me a yes when you're ready to chat. All right, how we doing? Got a little bit of yeses there. All right. Okay, let's go ahead and start talking. Now, one thing that a lot of people ask, thinking about the exam, when I get your scrap paper, that's how I can award you partial credit on different problems. And people are like, well, how do I show my work on this? Right? And that's true. I mean, it's very hard. But when you're thinking about the mean, we know that for the mean, we have to add all of these numbers together. Well, when you add all of these 7 numbers together, you should get 164. And there are 7 of them, so I would divide by 4. Right there is showing my work. So it's not much. I didn't show that I added all 7 together, but you showed me that you took 164, you divided by 7. If you were off by 12 or you're off by whatever, then I can say, oh, they missed a number, right? It's easy for me to see if you got it wrong, why you got it wrong if you give me your fraction. So it does help if you would show your work or as much as possible. All right, so what did you get for your mean? $23.43. Yep. And I didn't tell you what to round to, so you might have rounded something differently, and that's fine. Okay, then we go to the median. What'd you get for the median? 24. It's directly in the middle by itself. So there's that. We're going to come back to my vertical lines here in just a moment. What about the mode? What number appears the most often? 32. And what is your range? Yes, you are allowed to use a calculator on the exam. 20. Very good. 32 minus 12 is 20. Good. Okay, now we get to the percentiles. So, let me just, there, okay, so we're dealing with these numbers. Obviously, I have put a green vertical line, or 400 of them, through the median. So that median splits it up. Remember that the median is the 50th percentile. So I think of this as cutting down trees. Since that went directly through 24, that tree has been cut down. So when I'm looking for the 25th percentile, that is the median of my front half. Okay, so when I look at the front half, the median is the number in the middle, which is 16. When I talk about the upper half, well, since 24 was a tree and it got chopped down, I don't deal with it again. And now 32, this 32 is my 75th percentile. I like to do the vertical lines here because if you put the vertical lines in the correct positions, in front of the first vertical line, I have one number. Between my next two vertical lines, I have one number. Between the next two, I have one number. And then after the last one, I have one number. That should always be the same. You should have the same number of data points between and before and after your vertical lines. So it's kind of a visual check to make sure that you are in the right spot with your percentiles. And so that's something that I really like to do. You know, you don't have to make them as thick or as vibrant as mine, but a nice visual is always a good thing. So, okay, let's go to the next one. For this one, we're not going to do the mean, the mode, or the range. I feel like we got those, but I want to do the percentile. So I want you in this one to find the median, the 25th, and the 75th percentile. And it's a little bit different because we have an even number in our data set. So go ahead and try this one. We'll come back here in just a moment. All right, let's see where you're at and what you're up to. First things first, you got to find the median. Even if you're going to find the percentiles, if that's your goal, you still have to start with the median. So what did you come up with for your median? Did anybody find the median? Are you stuck? You gotta verbalize this, guys. I can't read your minds. I can't even see your faces, you know? 59, there we go. So you have an even number. So if you work your way to the middle, right, you see that you have two numbers in the middle. So if we find the average of 58 and 60, so add them together, divide by 2, you end up with 59. So our vertical line is between those two. So think about two trees standing, you wave your axe and you miss them both, but you cut right down the middle. So when I'm thinking about my 25th percentile, 58 is part of that because it didn't get chopped down. 59 got chopped down. 58 is still alive and well. So when I go for my upper half, what's my 25th percentile? 50. Exactly. And then my 75th percentile, 60 did not get chopped down, right? 59 got chopped down. So what is my 75th percentile? That's 60. Yep. So then when I go back to the, do I have the right number in between? Here's one, here's one, here's one, and here's one. So then yes, it works. Okay. Thoughts? Camera action. Sorry, Miss Jackson. I will be, so you have an Excel assignment about descriptive statistics where you're going to do these things with Excel. If you don't know how to find the formulas, right, you don't have to use, Excel is a calculator. So Excel will do all of the math for you. You just have to know where to find the formulas. And if you're thinking right now, I don't have a clue, that's fabulous. I'm posting a video for that. It will show you how to use all of the formulas for all of these. Okay, so that's important. All right, moving on. Symmetrical versus skewness. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I want to just show you pictures. If we're talking about symmetrical, that means it's pretty much the same on the left and the right. Right? If you drew a line down the middle, the left and the right are the same. Primarily, the mean is equal to the median. That's usually true if we're dealing with symmetrical data. Okay. If we're talking about being skewed right, if you have a picture, your high stuff is going to be on the left and it's going to tail off towards the right. So whichever way the tail goes, that's the way it's skewed. And we would generally say that the mean is greater than the median. I remember this because you can see the way this inequality symbol is pointing. That's the way it tails. That's how I remember. And then if we're talking skewed left, that's where your big stuff is on the left and it tails off toward, or it's all on the right, it tails off towards the left. So again, you see it's tailing to the left. So that means that the mean is less than the median, generally speaking. Those aren't always true, but that's generally speaking. So if you're looking at a picture, you can see which way the tail goes. That's the way it's skewed. And there's kind of the general idea. Okay. Obviously, there are videos about that, so feel free to watch those if you want more information. Okay. Let's move on to section 9. So the last section in unit 1 deals with weighted averages. So if we go back to section 8, where we just finished, and we talked about the average, right? We added things up and we divided by how many numbers there were. Now, that works if everything is weighted the same. So if one thing is not more important, you just add them all up and divide, it's great. However, think about this math course, right? Math 123 that we're talking about right now. Your grades are weighted. Your exams are weighted more than your quizzes, your projects, discussion boards, whatever. So different things count more. If you get a 0 on an exam, it'll pretty much kill you. You get a 0 on a homework assignment, you'll be fine. You don't want to get a bunch of zeros, but one's not going to kill you. So you've got to pay attention of where's your grade weighted, the most. Okay, so enough of me blabbling. There are 2 different ways to calculate weighted average problems. One of them is with percentages. So if you are given a problem and it's got a bunch of percents, here are the weights in percents, like this grade, you would use the percents. Counts. Your GPA is a weighted average based off of the value of your grades. And we're going to do examples so that you can see exactly how this works. So we're going to do a couple of examples, okay? I'm a big fan of tables because I like my data to be organized. So I'm going to show you how I organize these problems, and if you don't like it, you can figure out what works for you. But if you are an organized person, you really like things to be organized, I think you'll like this. So you're also, project 1 is also based off of weighted averages. So it'll be important, like this example right here. If you can do this example by hand, that's pretty much what your project is going to look like. You're just going to do it in Excel and let Excel do the math for you. And remember, I have videos for that. So, okay, here's the deal. You are in a class that has homework, quizzes, projects, and exams. And these are the weights, 10, 20, 25, 45%. And these are all of you had 4 homework assignments, 3 quizzes, 2 projects, and 2 exams. And these are your scores on them, right? Which is not too bad. I'd be happy with this. So we want to figure out what your grade is in this class. But we know that it's weighted. So we have different weights. So this is my table that I would set up. I've got homework, I've got quizzes, I've got projects, and I've got exams, right? So that's kind of those are my labels. And then I know that I have my weights. So my weights are 10%, 20%, 25%, and 45%. My third column is going to be what I call the category average, because not every homework score gets multiplied by 10%. That's homework in general. So we have to first find the average for each of these categories, right? So what is your homework average? What is your quiz average? What is your project average? And what is your exam average? So in this spot over here, this is where the average that we just talked about comes into play. For my homework average, I'm going to add those 4 numbers together, and I'm going to divide by 4, because there are 4 homework assignments, okay? So your first job is to find the average of each of those categories: homework, quizzes, projects, and exams. Okay, do you have those 4 averages? When you add the 4 homework scores together and you divide by 4, you should get 95.5. You should get 78.33, 94, and 90, right? Now, just think how much easier this would be if you could just hit a couple buttons and all the math would be done for you, right? Instead of doing it all by yourself on your calculator. And that's what Excel will do for you. Okay, so we found our category averages. So I'm just going to move those down here because, again, I'm a big fan of organization when I'm doing math. Okay, category average. Now is where we go to find them. And Becky, this is a Beckyism. I have coined my own phrase, and I like to call it quality points. We need to figure out how many points you earned in each category based off of this information. So if you have an average of 95.5 and that's 10% of your grade, how do you think we're going to find our quality points for that section? Anybody have any idea? We're not going to divide. How about the opposite of that? We're going to multiply. We're going to take 10% of that 95.5, and that's going to tell us how many points we've earned from that. So remember, you're going to take 0.1, because we got to change that percent to a decimal, and we multiply by our category average. So what is 0.1 times 95.5? $9.55. Good. So you've earned 9.55 quality points from homework. And then you do the same thing for quizzes. 0.2 times 78.33. That 70 really killed you in the quiz category.
$15.666.
There we go. We'll just round that to 6.7 for fun. Then we do our projects, 0.25 times 94, and our exams of 0.45 times 90. I'll just go ahead and fill those in. I think you get the point, 23.5 and 40.5. Okay, so now at this point, we're going to take the total of our quality points and we're going to divide by our total weights. So if we add all of our quality points together, what do you get when you add those numbers together? $89.22. All right, so 89.22. Total weights, well, if this class is run correctly, the total weights will be 100%. What is 100% as a decimal? Just 1, which means your weighted grade is just the sum of your quality points, 89.22. And unfortunately, if this is this class, that's a B. Which you did really, really well on dang near everything, but that quiz, that's a 70, dropped you down to a B. Well, and you got an 80 on the last exam. Whatever. Okay, so that's how we can do a percent problem weighted average. And again, that's exactly what your first project is going to look like, except you're going to use Excel to do all of the math. Okay. All right, so there's that one. Now we're going to do 2 problems dealing with counts, the other method. And then we're going to talk about the project, we'll talk about exams, and we'll be done. Okay, Sarah is selling 8 watches for $45 each, 12 necklaces for $60 each, and 35 clocks for $92 each. What is the average cost of an item? So we can't just add the 3 costs together and divide by 3 because we have different numbers of each one of them, right? You would have to say 8 watches at $45 each. That's 45 plus 45 plus 45 plus 45, and you get the point. Nobody wants to add that many numbers together, right? I just don't. So I have watches, I have necklaces, and I have clocks. So we're going to talk about, oh, excuse me, my contact was bothering me there for a minute. How many of each of these am I selling? Well, I've got 8 watches, I've got 12 necklaces, and I've got 35 clocks. how much is each of these? Well, watches are 45, necklaces are 60, and clocks are 92. Right. So really, it's just the first part is just organizing the data in. For me, that's what I do first. You do it however you want. And just to be consistent, I always call this last column quality points, always, because it's always calculated the same way. How do we calculate the quality points? If you think about it, what did we do last time?
We added?
We added at the end. Before we added, what did we do?
Oh.
We multiplied.
We multiplied, exactly. And think about why this works. If I have 8 watches and they're each $45, if I multiply 8 by 45 to get 360, that tells me the value of all of my watches, right? Does that make sense? Same with my necklaces. I have 12 necklaces. They're worth $60 a piece. That means all of them are worth $720. That's what you're trying to find in that last column. You're trying to find the overall value of that particular item. And if I have 92 clocks that are $35 or 35 clocks at $92 a piece, then my clocks are worth $3,220. So those 3 yellow numbers, represent the total amount for each particular section. Now we can add them all together because, again, we're going to take our total quality points. This one we don't have weights. So what do you think we're going to divide by? The last one we divided by our total weights, but this one doesn't have weights.
Would you divide by how many, divide by 3 because you have 3
Ooh, not by 3.
sections?
You have 3 categories, but you would divide by the total number. How many items are you talking about? That's what you're, total number of items, exactly. So it's it's similar to the average that we talked about in section 8. It's just that we didn't want to write out 45 8 times and then 60 written out 12 times. You don't want to write all of those out and divide by a big number. So we do the multiplication first to make it a little bit easier. So if I add my 360, my 720, my 3220 together, what do we get?
4,300.
4,300. So the total value of my items is $4,300. And then we're going to divide by the total number of items. So how many total items do we have?
55.
55. So think about that. If I find the total value of all of the 55 items and I divide by 55, that'll give me the average value, or the average cost in this case, which is what?
$78.18.
$78.18. Yep. Which is higher than the necklaces and the watches, and it makes sense because your clocks are so much more expensive and you have a ton of them, right? So that's going to skew your data to be closer to the clock and away from everything else. So, okay, question on that one. So really, the counts and the weights, I set them up very similarly. It's just a matter that when you divide in the percents, you're only going to have a 1 on the bottom. Whereas when we're dealing with the counts, you're going to have an actual number on the bottom. So, all right, let's do a GPA problem. And pardon me, but I've got the credits. Those numbers should be in the other column. There's a, issue, whatever. Okay, how many of you know how your GPA is currently calculated? Anyone? All right, well, it's about time you find out. That way you can tell if people are wrong or not. Okay, so here's the deal. Each grade has a number value attached to it. So an A is worth 4 points, a B is worth 3 points, a C is 2, a D is 1, and if you fail a class, you get no points, which makes sense. You fail that you shouldn't get any points. So, so each grade has this point value attached to it, and you earn that many points per credit hour, because it's all based on how many credit hours you have, right? So we have to figure out first we're gonna talk about points. Okay, I'm just going to kind of add it onto this table. If we talk about biology, where you earned a C, how many points do you earn for that C? 2, right? So you earn 2 points for the C, and that is per credit hour. We're going to come back to that. You got an A in math, naturally, so you get 4 points for the A. You got a B in English, which is a 3-pointer. You got a D in history, so there's a 1, and you got a B in sociology. So these points are taken from this information up here. Okay. So this is per credit hour, which is why if you fail a 4 credit hour class, it hurts your GPA more than if you just fail a 1 credit hour class. I'm not saying you should fail anything, but the more credits, the more it hurts. Okay, so we have our points, and now we're going to find our quality points. Right? Quality points are found by multiplication. So we're going to take our points that we just found, and what are we going to multiply by, do you think? If these are the points per credit hour, how do you think we'll find our total quality points? By multiplying by what?
The credits?
Exactly. Exactly. So for biology, you're in 2 points per credit hour, and you have 3 credit hours. So 2 times 3 is 6. For math, you earn 4 points per credit hour. 4 times 3 is 12. English, 3 times 3 is 9. History is 1 times 4, which is 4. And then sociology, 3 times 3 is 9. So again, when we're finding our weighted average, we're going to take our total quality points. What do you think we're going to divide by in this problem?
The total number of credits?
Yeah, very good. Total credits. Because think about it. It's not impressive if you are going to, if you say, I got 10 quality points, but it took you 5 classes to get there. That's less impressive than if you earned 10 points in 3 classes, right? It's different. Okay, so how many total quality points did you earn here in this problem?
40.
40 is correct. And then we want to add our credits, which is this
Of those.
How many is those? What was that?
16.
16 credits. So we take 40 divided by 16 for a GPA of
2.5.
2.5. And there's your GPA. Yeah. All right, questions about any of that? That makes sense? How he set it up? I'm a big fan of setting them all up kind of in a similar fashion, because then to me it makes sense, because there's there's a method to it. And I'm a big fan of having a method to the madness, if you will. Okay. So that's all the new material for this week, and that gets you through Unit 1. So, let's go to the movies. Are you guys in the statewide assessment yet? I thought somebody said earlier they're not. This is the outcomes. Are you in this course? Have you gotten the... Oh, this is not good. What? Talk amongst yourselves for a second. I'm going to email Danielle and ask her what's going on. Hey, you guys can watch. Okay. She's kind of in charge of all that. Okay, so some people are, but some people aren't. Okay, some people, are you just not in yet? Did I just send that email prematurely? if you go to your home screen, does it show you at the top that you have something to add? Like something that, okay, I'll look into that. But anyway, in this is where you will take your review. And I know that a lot of people are really worried about the exam and how's it going to go. Don't worry. You want to do this review as many times as you possibly can, because this says no due date, but that's a lie. It's due the last day of the exam. So next Friday at 5 p.m., I will not take any scores that are in after Friday at 5. But you've got a 75-minute time limit. You've got 20 questions, and you can do it as many times as you want. And I take the highest grade. So this is built off of the online exam, which means if you go through this and you get really comfortable with these questions, you're going to do well on exam 1. Okay. And one other thing that I want to point out is, I think I've said this already once, but when you finish exam 1, it's going to tell you pretty much that you failed. Okay. Because I have to grade a good portion of that. And there are some questions that it doesn't like. So it's going to say that you got like a 45 or a 50, and you probably got like an 80 or 90, 95. I've had people go from a 45 to 100% before in an exam because of what stuff I have to grade and fix. And I give you partial credit from your work and all of that stuff. Okay, so don't freak out, but just work with me here. So you need to take, let me go back to our course here. Get me in the right course. In the announcements, I posted your exam information. And so if you haven't looked at this yet, you're going to want to. When you schedule your exam, so here's a video. It's like 1 minute, 3 seconds long, and it shows you how to schedule your exam. If you're taking it at an Ivy Tech location, this video will show you how to schedule your exam. It's going to ask you how long. Okay, so your first exam is, you have a 90-minute time limit, and you have to type that in. They're going to ask you, what is your time limit? And it's due on Friday at 5 p.m. So you have to schedule it sometime next week. But remember, we get into Unit 2, and that stuff is due next week also. So you don't want to wait until, I don't think you want to wait until Friday to take the exam, because that really kind of puts you behind the 8 ball. If you can prep and maybe take it by Wednesday, that will give you more time then to get into Unit 2. Okay? But you can take it anytime you want. If you finish this stuff this week, you want to take this test on Monday, do it. But you're gonna need to do that. So if you have other questions about the exam, obviously let me know. If you're using ProctorU, I have, remember, there is a fee cost to you to use ProctorU per exam. But I do have that set up. So you can go from there. If you can't go to an Ivy Tech and you don't want to pay for ProctorU, it is up to you to find a different proctoring site near you and getting me that information as soon as possible. I leave for Ohio tomorrow. I will be checking emails periodically, but I'm not going to be in my office again until next Monday. So it's going to be super important that you get information to me. To me, it's not my responsibility to make sure you know where you're testing. If you can't test at an Ivy Tech and you have to go somewhere else, to me, it is up to you to figure that out and then to communicate that with me. Okay, so if you have questions, shoot me an email. I will work with you, but it is up to you. I will not find you a proctor site. That is on you. All right, so that's kind of the exams. If you have questions, get them to me as soon as possible so that we can get them ironed out before the actual testing time. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is the first project. So the first project is found in Module 4. So you can see it. It's due July 11th, which I believe is a Wednesday, I think. But this is where you'll turn it in. So when you click on this, well, I'm the instructor, but I think this is where you can go in to submit that. Okay, but this is where you'll find the document that you need. And so I just like to point out exactly, and I will have a basic video to walk you through some of this. But if you see all of these white boxes on the left, you're going to use these white boxes kind of as your rubric. Okay, this is what I'm going to use to grade this. When I'm looking at your Excel spreadsheet, does it have your name on it, the course name, and the project name? So Becky Menning, Math 123, Project 1. Is it there? If so, you get points. Do you have all of these pieces? Are you using formulas? And the point of using Excel is that you can use cell references and formulas. If you change one number and hit enter, it will filter into everything that that number touches, and it's awesome. If you don't know how to do that, watch the video. You do have to type a reflection paper. Okay, I'm not looking for anything like ground shattering, just amazing. I'm looking that you answer these questions. And I recommend, okay, so you're going to put your name again, Becky Manning, Math 123, Project 1. You're going to put that at the top. And then for each one of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there are 6 bullets. I think you should write 6 paragraphs. And that's not saying the paragraphs had to be 5 sentences long with the topic sentence. I'm not an English teacher being that picky. I'm thinking you write 2 or 3 sentences answering this question, or maybe it's 2 or 3 paragraphs depending on how wordy you are. But if you, this is what I use to grade. Okay, so you need to make sure you are actually answering these questions. Okay, these are just basic information, and this is where all your information is. At the bottom of the back sheet, these are your scores. So you have, you're going to have to find category averages for these 4 pieces, right? And then you have 3 exams. And oh, and you're going to use our syllabus for the weights. I'm like, where are the weights at? That's new. So you're going to use our weights from the syllabus. So if you don't know where that's at or what that means, let me know. Okay, and we'll go from there. So that's new this semester. It changes every semester. So the questions change every semester. Everything changes every semester. So if you just use somebody's from last semester, you're going to screw yourself. So don't do that. It's not worth it. Okay. All right. Any questions about the exam, the project, any material from today, anything like that? Okay.